Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome to my overview of Cataclysmo. So for those not across it, I do overviews on this channel. I have a look at the first 2 hours of a game. That's the Steam refund window. Steam says that you can make up your mind about whether you want to keep a game or not in that time period. I tend to agree and would say 20 hours in, you're not going to change your mind about how you felt 2 hours in. So it's a short punchy video. I give you the broad strokes info. Keep it around 10 minutes and you can make up your own mind. So I've been really pumped for this game and it's really good. However, there's one caveat that I will cover at the beginning in that this sits in a relatively newer wave genre of combining overwhelming wave defense, tower defense type mechanics, which traditionally aren't that long form. You know, a tower defense game, you'll build up in rounds over like a 10 to 15 minute thing, and then you go to the next level. So it kind of takes that and then makes it a bit more long form by mixing it in with colony builders, logistic chains, you know, pick your poison, but it will create like a more robust base experience. Now, these other games that come to mind are things like They Are Billions, Age of Darkness, something or other. That's another one. Even The Last Spell, even though that's turn-based, it's still tapping the same thing. Now, I personally think there's a little bit of a problem with these genres in that the mixing of those two unlikely bedfellows creates a scenario where you'll build a base and you'll anally place each block of your wall in this particular case, but the same issue sort of exists with the other games. And you'll spend like an hour on it. You'll fight the enemies. Either you'll wipe and you'll have to restart the whole hour, which is kind of awful, or you know, you complete it and you move on, and in a way it feels like a bit of a wasted sunk cost, right? Compare it to the extreme, something like Factorio, where you will put hundreds of hours into your base. In these games, I find that that's the kink that I haven't quite worked out, is that you spend all this time building a base for a scenario that you're going to move on from in an hour. So look, sure, I'm being a little bit critical. I'm not absolutely enraptured by this genre, but having said all of that, I like all those games. I've enjoyed my time with them. I just feel like there's something not quite there yet. This game is quite brilliant. It's doing its own twist. So yeah, you have overwhelming odds that attack you, but the real shtick or gimmick or what this brings to the table is its focus on building battlements, which I touched on. Normally speaking, you'll just build a wall segment. You know, think They Are Billions, walls, towers, gates, that sort of thing. It doesn't get much more complex than that. In fact, the complexity is more about the economy and the management of your peasantry and your units. This focuses in pretty hard in elevation. And what do I mean by that? Well, some simple examples in the world theory, and you know, I won't go into it too much, but you kind of have to use a resource, oxygen. You have to harvest oxygen. The air's thin, it's misty and smoggy, whatever, right? It doesn't really matter. But the point is that units will take an oxygen tax and you basically have to up your production to offset it. And the best way to do that is build these oxygen filter, you know, sucker-inners, that the higher they are, the better, up to a cap. It turns out it's about 5 blocks off the base ground level. So if you place these 5 blocks in the air elevated, you're going to get the max bang for your buck. And so from that, you want to build foundations below it to elevate it. They also need access because people have to go up there and grab it, so you have to build like a staircase and try not to take up too much real estate. So there's a lot of verticality there. So that's a basic example of how that works. Where the real complexity and meat of this game is in building your base's battlements, your walls around the edge. At the basic level, you start laying bricks. I don't think it has to be bricklayer interconnected, but I can't help myself. But you could probably just stack things straight up. But they get adjacency and stack bonuses. So one brick on its own has only so much strength, but once you start stacking it like 4, 5, 6, 7 high, as long as making it part of a wall, you know, a tall, solid, actual fortifiable wall, they get compounding strength bonuses and the little model will change and it looks less, you know, mossy and broken down and more, you know, glamorous. And that's cool having that feedback. So that's how you build up the walls, you make them stronger and higher and thicker. But the real magic on this is the units and how they interplay with height bonuses. So again, it's a very slow burn, but as a quick aside, the way that it's telling the story, there's a campaign here, even though it's early access, there's a lot of stuff here. And the story is quite, not necessarily grim, but it definitely, how do I use my words here? It definitely embraces and revels in the kind of low-key, slow burn itself. The story's not in a rush to feed you dopamine or anything like that. It's not like high energy bloody combo chains or anything. It's very dark, and I mean visually dark, not necessarily grim, but it has this low, slow, immersive tone all its own where it's willing to kind of take its time. And there's something really quite, mellow's not the word for it, but yeah. I don't think I've had to describe it, but I really like what's here. It ratchets it down a notch and allows you to kind of just sit in it, and you become immersed at a sort of lower energy level. The weird words I'm using, but it's difficult to describe. Think maybe, here's a stretch, I don't know how much you're into movies, think like a Nicholas Winding Refn movie, how it is about visual style and really being a bit more laborious and taking its time moving through a scene. Anyway, that all sounds a bit cringe, but I'm doing my best to describe it. It's very cool. And whilst, visually striking after its own fashion, kind of nothing like Moonlighter, which is the previous game they did, which I love, which you should check out. But yeah, it's slowly meting out story and mechanics. Again, like I said, not to go too circular, nature of the beast. Early on, we're into missions that are going to take 45 minutes, an hour or whatever, so there's only so much I can cover. But we've got two main units at the moment. One is this sort of bomber unit, and one is an archer. Now, the bomber is considered a low ground unit. You can mouse over the little tooltips, they're very helpful, but essentially what that means is, for this dude to get max value out of his attacks and get bonuses, you want him below 4 pips of elevation over his target, right? There's a lot of undulating terrain, but broadly speaking, I think you can understand what I'm saying. So what you want to do is you build up your castle walls, and you don't necessarily want to put in bloody 10 bricks up at the top of the battlements like out of a movie. Maybe you want to build a little second half wall out the front and put them on that. And you can mouse over him, and it does like an area overlay showing you where the bonuses are. It's all very readable, but you want to work around that to get, he gets range bonuses and so on. And inversely, the archer is a high ground unit where he wants to be 5 or more blocks above. And so this dictates your build method. It's very clever, bearing in mind as well they have to get up onto the walls, and you get a pretty good suite of both stone and wood buildings, and you have to harvest stone and wood in your colony. You have little workers, you don't build the workers, all you do is build the workplace, try not to have them overlap or anything, and as long as they've got a path back to base, they will harvest the resources. So stone is pretty much self-explanatory, more for the battlements, and then wood is a bit more cheaper and accessible, and that's where you get your stairs. You can create all sorts of cool, unusual things. They have to be supported. There are some things that sort of have little hangout ledges. I'm using my hands. So you can use that to get away and get around. Maybe you can make a swirling, curved spiral staircase around a central pillar. There's a lot of spending 15 to 20 minutes building a bloody spiral staircase. Like, if you enjoy that, it flies very close to the sun of, creative sandbox in a way. And you can blueprint things quite easily, which is a godsend. So if you spend a whole lot coming up with some prototype experiment, stairwell or battlement or something that fits your needs generally. I did the same with like the oxygen things I was talking about. I created a blueprint to save that, and it's very easy to copy paste that in the future. So that's a good way to get around it and kind of get that time back, right? You can see there's a theme. I have kind of an issue with investing half an hour into building a wall that the mission's going to finish in another half hour and I'm going to have to do it all again. So the blueprint thing kind of solves that problem a bit. So you have to build battlements, you have to have stairways to get them up there. And then you get like bonus things that you can put on the top. You can put little like bloody manlet edge, the nub things that they stand behind in the movies, the archers, so as not to get shot. Now that creates essentially an aura behind it. So if you place that in front of a square, any dude standing on the square behind it, and it's very readable, it's very obvious, but he will get like range bonus, damage bonus, all these cool bonuses. So you really want to build that. And then beyond that, you've got like banners that have an area effect. So you have all these kind of special effect blocks that you want to work into your building. And this is what really tickles me, because I touched on it just before talking about like creative modes. I can't stand creative sandbox games, right? Nothing against Minecraft or whatever, but all these people that just want to play it to make a giant meatball in a server like 500 blocks high, I don't get it. I'm not inspired by that. I kind of need an objective to drive me forward. As soon as you give me a tool suite and say, create, do whatever, I kind of get a bit dirty on a dev, because I feel like you're just giving me paints and an easel and telling me to make my own painting, make up my own fun. Where's the game? You're just giving me a tool suite. I might as well be doing CAD modeling. So this rides the line between, and I find it personally pretty cool, the idea that yes, there is potentially a creative spirit to your building, but it is all built on combos and function over everything else, where you will try and build an efficient, clever wall with the resources available and use these bonuses to position your limited warriors so as to get them firing faster and longer and doing more damage. So it's very cool. It does tap my creative spirit as little as I kind of want to tap it often in most games that you see these days. Anyway, I hope this makes sense. Perhaps this appeals to you. Maybe you are curmudgeon-y and you sit in the same space as me, where you're much more interested in functional engineering when you build these structures as opposed to whether it looks pretty or not. This game, I feel, honestly, even though I'm biased to one side, I feel like it's come up with a system that will account for both sides. You can make some pretty cool looking medieval walls and portcullis and all that sort of crap, and you can make some very functional, clever, fiendish combo things as well. So yeah, I'm very impressed. Anyway, I think I've covered the main points. It's very cool. It's going into early access. I'd be curious to see how its development goes along. I stand by Digital Sun, the devs, they're pretty wonderful, and Hooded Horse, the publisher, so it's a combo made for people like me. It's an absolute dream come true. I wish them well, and I look forward to revisiting it, probably when it goes full release, whenever that is. Anyway, team, might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.